Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to Postscript. We're going to do some questions here today. We've been off the air here, if you will, for a little bit. Uh, the holidays caught me out of town a good bit. Thanksgiving, we went to Portugal for a week and had a good time, and then turned around and a couple of days later I went to Texas and then to Chicago. And anyway, and by the time it all got finished, we were just getting caught up here in terms of some of the programs and some of the things that we need to be doing. And so one of them is to answer some questions. And so I'm happy to do that. Um, we've got a lot of them. There've been a bit of time here, so we've collected a whole lot of questions. Peter O'Connor says, in which book did Mr. Steele write something about reincarnation? I don't know who you're talking about. It might be Robert David Steele, in which case I don't know at all. And if it's somebody else with the name of Steele, then sadly, Peter, I can't help you. You give us a little more information, maybe I could. Pauline Edwards says, I watched several of your presentations on your YouTube channel and found that your work and that of your contributors resonates very much with my journey. Wanted to ask you if you might be interested in my two latest books, Aquarius, The Age of Revelation, Choice and Transformation, and Gateway to a New World. Let me know if you might be interested in these books, and if so, provide a mailing address. Yeah, I would be, as a matter of fact. And I'm particularly interested in terms of being able to digitize them and be able to provide them to train this AI that we're working on with Mike Adams that will provide anybody at no cost. It'll be free. The ability to do advanced artificial intelligence based searching from a point of view and from a perspective that is, based on books like yours and many other ones in metaphysics and alternative energy and UFOs and alien life and any number of other kind of things like that you're not going to find on Chat GPT or any other conventional kind of approaches. I believe that this is one of the most important projects that we've got going here, and that has extraordinary implications for being able to provide perhaps the most important tool for the emergence of a new world, because it allow everybody to be able to have sophisticated access to solutions and queries and uh, options that you just never would otherwise. And it allows the metabolism of the system to just keep up with all of the efforts that are being done on the other side of the equation with the Chat GPTs and the other large language models. And so, yeah, send them along. Uh, I'm not in a position to promise that I'll spend a lot of time reading them, because I've got piles 2 feet high on my floor of all books that I've bought that I need to read. And so, but I'll tell you the process in which I do this is that I put them on the floor, and then when the time comes for another one, then I kind of look at all of them, and whichever one seems like the right one, I grab it, and it's always the right one. And it just gives me lots of novel and new information about things that I hadn't seen. And so, I'll put it in my pile and we'll see what happens. Thank you, Pauline. Arcanda says, can you elaborate on the role of the World Economic Forum's reset narrative in addressing the global debt crisis and how it ties into Martin Armstrong's predictions? Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's pretty easy, and it's pretty fundamental. Well, Martin Armstrong, who of course is an economist and tracks how the kind of world things, world situation from an economic point of view, financial point of view. What Marty will tell you is that the most important kind of issue that's driving everything on the planet today is the sovereign debt crisis. And by that he means is that countries and central banks have all overextended themselves in terms of issuing money that they have that they've had to support with debt, with bonds and other kind of treasury notes and such, and that will never get repaid. As a matter of fact, upwards of 50% of the revenue generated by the IRS in the United States is just goes to pay the interest on the outstanding debt that we have, and that cannot continue. As a matter of fact, Marty and others, that David Martin, for instance, have all come to the conclusion that there's a date certain out about 2027 when the global financial system hits the wall and it collapses, because it's clear now that none of these giant debts the United States owes, what is it, 38 trillion dollars now, and that debt will never get repaid, and so someday it comes home to roost, and other countries won't buy your treasury notes and whatever, and then the whole system starts to cave. And so that's the problem that the World Economic Forum and others are trying to deal with. And they've been offered other alternatives and options for dealing with this, but what they've chosen is that they want to collapse the whole system. They call it a reset. And in so doing, they will eliminate all of the debt, all this sovereign debt, kind of wipe that away. And they kind of throw a bone to those of us on the bottom level of this whole system and tell you there's going to be a jubilee and that you won't have to, get rid of all of your debt, So credit cards and car debts and mortgages and home mortgages and things. And, everybody down on the ground will say, oh, what a wonderful thing. And that provides them the cover to be able to get rid of these trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that otherwise would cave in on him. And so they need an excuse. You can't just come out of the box and say, we're going to collapse the financial system. And by the way, and we'll give you some new digital currency that's worth maybe a nickel on the dollar. They can't just do that. People get all excited and it runs on banks and everything else. And so what they need is an excuse to do that. And that is World War III. And they're trying one way or another to get World War III started. And in particular, what it looks like is to try to get the United States to go together with Israel and bomb Iran, or go after Russia or China or all three at the same time or some crazy thing. And that then gives them the cover and the excuse to say, oh, well, we have to collapse the financial system. If they're not successful in getting the financial system collapsed, then there's kind of like a direct line to a global revolution. Well, Martin Armstrong's computer calls it global civil war. That was a novel idea to me when I first heard about it, because civil war is classically to national kind of event with two different forces vying for the control of some nation. And it took me a couple months to thinking about it to say, oh, I know what this is. This is the people all rise up against the governments across the planet. And the basis of that the remote viewers say the basis of that is the idea of betrayal, that people, for lots of reasons, including almost certainly that there are secrets that are going to be revealed that will leak out of the system that'll say that, for instance, that they've had free energy devices for decades and decades and kept them secret from us, forced us all to pay for energy. Well, there's a whole lot of things like that that almost certainly are uh, in the black programs, and that's what this is all about. And they're not going to quit because this sovereign debt thing is existential. That is to say that it brings down all the banks and it brings down, it's just really a big deal. So Siskiyou James Kramer says, "Hi, John. I really enjoyed hearing you with Robert Edward Grant. That was a uh, podcast I did with Robert. It's great to become aware of your work. My reason for writing is to inquire whether you're familiar with the work of James Mahu, presented through the mythology of the Wong makers. His book, The Ancient Arrow Project, is a seminal work related to much of what you spoke of regarding remote viewing and matters that go on behind the scenes at the CIA and above them." Well, thank you, Siskiyou. I'm not familiar with that, but we'll look it up. David Miller says, "Hi, I'm responding to your AI prompt engineer request to the universe during your last quartet preview. I am a longtime fan of Penny and the Woo, and have been planning to visit you in 2025. I'm an old tech and crypto guy with a unique set of skills, and I've acquired over many years, and I would love to discuss how our skills and vision might align." Okay, David, we'll try to make that happen. I think I'm going to need more information about you, contact information. So please send that along if you will. Mariana Visan, Visan. I'm a dentist interested in holistic dentistry and a new way of healing. How can I help and learn from you? Also, I want to know what's your opinion on in Damanhur and the way a new community of people start living in a new system. For those of you who are not familiar, Damanhur is this wonderful place in Italy. I think it's by Bologna or something up north. And it's been around for quite some time. And it's best known for these amazing underground rooms, big rooms that have been decorated in amazing kind of with mosaics and all kinds of extraordinary things. I mean, it's like the seventh wonder of the world or something like that. They're just extraordinary and beautiful, and they were all. It was done by a guy named Falco, who was the leader of all of that, and he brought these people together, and they secretly dug this out at night. And then when the government found out about it, they got all excited, and so they took them and showed them what they were doing, and everybody decided, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And so for easily 25 years or more, they have existed. Last time I checked, and as I remember, there were about something like 125 or 150 people, maybe it was, that were living directly, that were part of the community. And there was this larger group that was another maybe 3 or 4 or 500. And anyway, they have a lot of businesses that they support that are on the outside and around there that generate the revenues and things to sustain the place. It's gorgeous, and it's at one time I tried to lead a tour there, and we couldn't generate enough interest in it at the time. So I really liked it, and I like what they do. In fact, I wrote a blurb for Falco, one of Falco's books, because they had asked if I would do that. they have done a lot of novel and new things with energy and spiritual and subtle energies and spirit-based kinds of things. They did marvelous things with plants and being able to talk to plants and communicate with plants. They also have an alternative energy device that they kind of keep under wraps that's pretty revolutionary. So I'm told they have gone through, the last time I checked, they had gone through 24 different constitutions. Um, that is to say that they had gone through 24 different iterations of trying to figure out how to live effectively together in a new and a different kind of way. Yeah, which highlights the kind of the problem, because there are a lot of folks who've tried these new communities and other kind of things, and for one reason or another, almost all of them kind of fall apart. A lot of it about economics, and some of it is about sex and other such things. But Damanhur is a wonderful place, and Greg Braden's been there, and they really invited him to come back, and we've talked about about going back there together sometime just to check it out. But it would certainly merits your looking into, because it's really novel and rather successful at what they've done. It's and a beautiful, beautiful place. Ken Bartle says, I've now watched 3 of your videos and I wholeheartedly concur with you and my mention of Buckminster Fuller's advice that we build now a model that makes the old redundant. Well, thanks for that comment, Ken. Appreciate that very much. Tricia Wardino says, how can we help, John? With your background, I thought you'd be interested in an interview that Candace Owens did yesterday with Phil Tourney, a survivor of the USS Liberty attack that LBJ covered up. That was the Liberty was a intelligence gathering boat ship, U.S. Navy ship that I think it was the 6-day war. They were out in the Mediterranean, and the Israelis sent waves of A-4 bombers out there with bombs to try to sink the ship. And it was only, and then the whole thing was covered up by the government, our government, even though our supposed allies, the Israelis, had tried to sink our ship. And so I'm very much familiar with the story, was friends with the admiral that had to deal with all that, who was the chief of naval operations at the time, and spent the rest of his life trying to make amends for the poor guys that 150 people or something like that got killed. Many others, it was just swept under the rug because Lyndon Johnson didn't want to embarrass the Israelis. And so, yeah, I'm not familiar with the Candace Owens interview, but I know about it, Tricia. So thanks for mentioning that. Al Morgan says, I'm looking forward to meeting you on January the 18th. I'm giving a transition talk here in a couple of weeks on the 18th. And so that's what she's talking about. She says, I teach public speaking at Penn State University, which is just up straight north of here. She says a lot of things here, but she says that my main reason for attending in January is to float the idea that has been percolating for me, writing an epic musical theater piece about this new world birthing. This is what artists do. I would love your reaction to this impetus I am feeling. I think that one of the most important things that we all have to do to help prepare for this new world is to essentially began to play a major part in entertainment media of all kinds, and particularly the visual arts, movies, television stuff, and so on. We need to begin to um, generate images, pictures, stories, other things that people can relate to that are built around the ideas, around the concepts of this new world. Uh, Otherwise, they don't make sense. It's abstract kind of things. If you say that it's built up around you can do anything you want as long as you don't hurt anybody, or words to that effect. Um, but when you build a story around that kind of concept and some of the other ones, then people can see how it kind of works. And so uh, a musical is a cool idea. I've just seen, we just went to the Bob Dylan film, which was a musical about his life, which was, they're always fun. I enjoy those. And so I would encourage you to do that. And if you come by, come and hunt me up. I'd be happy to talk to you. I guess that's it. Thank you, Al. Then Jandra Bjorkman says, you mentioned your contact with the Pleiadians and their message of concern in the immediate years ahead. This differs from the work of and information from Elena Danaan. First of all, it's not my contact with the Pleiadians. It was Barbara Marciniak, and it's the subject of, I think, 5 of her 5 books she wrote about this. And I am familiar with the work of Elena Danaan. I have no doubt that it may not be the same as what she thinks. Thank you, Genre. Kim Hotchkiss says, I just listened to your Mike Adams interview. Is there anywhere to be safe, or are we all doomed? Well, I don't think we're all doomed. There are some people who think that we're all doomed, but I don't think we're all doomed. I think there's going to be that left to its, if we don't engage in very substantial ways. This is what I'm going to talk about on the 18th of January here in Berkeley Springs. And it'll be live streamed as well, so you can catch it there if you'd like. If we don't engage, we've got about 2 years before to turn this thing. That is to say, to at least break off our group, our interests into, and start to build the basis for a new world. Otherwise, the technology is moving so fast and it's so pervasive and invasive that it's easy to look out and say within 10 years they'll have all the money will be digital. They'll know where we are. They'll know what we think. They'll know what's going on in our bodies. They'll know all about what we do and all of our friends and everything, and they can turn us off or influence us in any way that we want, and they want at any time that they want, if they don't like who we are and what we are. And so we've got to get out first, and we got to start and build a new track, and essentially build a new world. And so we're not all doomed. There is a way out of this. If we don't engage, and if we don't kind of rise to the occasion, if we don't do what many of us think we came here to do, then, I don't know. It'll certainly be enveloped by the matrix, by the machine, by the simulation, whatever you want to call it. And it's all about control and how to, control your life and just use you as an energy source, essentially. And so if you consider that being doomed, then there's certainly a way to become doomed, and that is to do nothing. And so what we all have to do is to stand up, and that's what we're trying to do here at the Arlington, is to put in place substantial kind of programs, including Transition Net and some of the other things that we do. But you're all about this new human in a new world, and in like I say, tangible ways that you can step forward and start to do that. And so stay tuned, and we'll give you reasons and ways to do that. GGZ says, if you will contact me, I can send PDFs introducing the most advanced tech in history. I would love to see your advanced tech in history, and so I will do that. Thank you. Kenneth Cartier says, I recently had the pleasure of witnessing your insightful conversation on Mike Adams' show, which significantly resonated with me, particularly your passionate commitment to humanitarian causes. He lives in Kentucky. He says, I'm on the cusp of introducing a comprehensive program that, upon its implementation, will not only enhance the quality of life for average citizens, but also bolster revenue streams for, in this case, a city and a county where he lives. And he says, I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this initiative with me and further ways in which we can unite our efforts to make a tangible difference in the lives of many. Sounds interesting to me. I'm for it, Ken. We'll get in touch with you here one way or another. Clayton Drinkard says, I heard the interview with Mike Adams today. Fantastic stuff. I'd like to do my part to help build a new foundation of society. I wrote a book 12 years ago approaching this topic. It's called An Alternative to Fascism, Solutions for a Broken System. I'd love to see the book. Again, if for no other reason than to digitize it and put it into the AI that Mike Adams and I'm helping him a little bit to build, so that your ideas are in there for everybody to respond to. And so happy to, we'll drop you a note or something and encourage you to do that. Paul says he's concerned for my health, John's health. I know you don't know me, but please listen. I saw John before his last medical emergency on YouTube, and he looked gray, and I knew he was in trouble health-wise. I saw John last week, and he really needs to be checked out, as there's something seriously wrong with his health. I am very concerned. Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that very much. You're not the only one that has mentioned that. I have had a couple of problems, and particularly in the last talk that I gave, it was 4 hours long in the last transition talk back in September, and I think my blood sugar went way down or something like that, and it was really tough for me to get through it all, and so I was really whipped at the end of it, and I'm sure it was obvious. My wife looked at it and said, you looked horrible. So anyway, so yeah, but I'm looking better, I hope, and I'm doing better, and I appreciate your concern. Karen Witten says, hello, John. Great interview with Mike Adams. There was so much that resonated with me, which prompted me to reach out to in the event that I might support your mission to help building a model and a framework for a new world, and more specifically, define the principles. That's cool. She's got a book called The 25 Mindsets, Understand Anyone, Even Yourself. And the book has some things in it from Dave Martin, I guess. And it's a framework for using polarities to make it easy for people to understand themselves. She's only scratching the surface of a decade's worth of research, and if it makes sense to talk more, please do not hesitate to reach out. If interested, I'm happy to email a book to you. Well, yes, send it along. Sounds interesting. And again, we'll put it in the database. If not, try to integrate it into some of our other work. So thank you very much. Stephen Ash says, I watched John's talk with the Health Ranger Report, and I'm interested in joining Transition Net. I have some few questions which I think are important. Number one, what precautions are you taking to protect all the participants' privacy and identity and so on? Well, we're a good ways away from having to implement any particular thing, Stephen, but that has been the subject of conversations, and so there is got to be it's high on our agenda. It's got to be a way in which we can assure that people who play in this space, first of all, we need to vet them, and make sure that that people who are participating on the inside are not there to try to bring the thing down. Having done that, and we've got some really novel and pretty interesting ways in which to do that, then you got to worry about the whole system being hacked in some kind of way. So it really needs some very advanced kind of security, and there will be things that'll almost certainly be built on the blockchain or a new version of the internet. There are people who are working on new alternative internets, and if they are successful in that, then that's where we would go. How can you truly make this grassroots and decentralized and not centrally directed or controlled by your organization? Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think you can do the whole thing grassroots because that's like saying to a million people, well, what do you think? And then it's just cacophony. And so, so on one hand, you have a lot of transition that is built around a global network of chapters. And so you have local people all over the place in chapters who have local communities and doing all kinds of local kind of things, but they also have particular interest or topic area like education or technology or whatever. And they choose to be a resource to the core model development process within that area. So there'd be lots of different education nodes all over the world and different technology nodes and so on, and they would interact with each other and so on. But if you think that generating a model for a new world just raises up out of discussions from a lot of people, then you've got a different kind of understanding about how this reality works than I do. And I've spent a lot of time in a lot of different places and to understand that it's very complex and there needs to be some kind of direction. And so the role we would see is to have a local staff that is essentially managing the model and bringing the ideas in from the outside, tasking the different groups for different kind of input, and have it overseen by a group which I want to call the Global Futures Network of I don't know, 50 maybe very very bright and sophisticated and tuned in, spiritually sensitive people who are really big thinkers who can look at the direction and how this is all going and what it needs, and it kind of evaluate input that's coming in and say it needs to kind of be tuned this way, and to be able to do the tasking and send it out to all the education guys and say, we really need some input on this. What kind of ideas do you have? But it is this kind of amalgam, if you will, and of direction and being curated, if you will, the process, and an extended distributed list of large numbers of people who are all contributing to it. The project has a whole lot of secondary and tertiary kind of ideas that are associated with it that'll become clear, as we get further down the stream. But I guess I really don't think that whether it's in a local community like our little town where we've got county commissioners and they have meetings and they deal with issues. You can't just, I don't know of a method that whereby you do that for the whole planet, let alone for a town. And so at this point, at least, and so that's what we're doing. What safeguards will be built in order to protect the organization from infiltration or a takeover by those who oppose it? Well, we're not stupid. We'll do a whole lot. We'll be very sensitive to that and have and build into it a lot of kind of safeguards because clearly there are some folks that are not of our with our objectives who will see this perhaps in some way as a problem and try to do that. They certainly do that in other ways, and so we're sensitive to that. But thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Kenneth Colvin says, "Okay, you are so close. You only lack the mechanism by which it happens." I don't know what specifically you're talking about. "Please give me a moment of your time. It happens through a new model of science known as the unified field theory and the unified particle theory. And that physics, I guess, is related to a new device which he is associated with, which he calls the refresher. And it does not reverse time, but it reverses the effects of time. So old people were reversed to their highest state, about 20 to 24 years old. That sounds interesting to me. I'd like that. That'd be fun. I had a good time back then. Children will grow until they hit that age and they will stay there indefinitely. These are just a few of many miraculous effects of the refresher, much more to tell you if you care to know." Kenneth Colvin, and he gives us a phone number. Well, we're going to reach out to you, Kenneth. You know, I'd settle for 30 or 35 rather than 20 or 24. But anyway, that would be pretty select. I make a little fun out of this, but it's not, because this is a good example of the kinds of technology that are going to be developed and surface in the next few years that literally could be the basis for this whole new world. And life extension, you know, there's a dozen different approaches that are many groups are taking, funded in some cases by some of the richest people on the planet to find a way to extend life. And most of those are all pretty conventional. This sounds interestingly unconventional. And so and if you know how to do that, then it has a whole lot of other kind of implications, obviously. And so it sounds very interesting. Carmelo Colon says, "I am a regular human whose only interest is to know the truth. The majority of people in institutions, including yours, while fighting for the truth, have only a piece of the truth, and because of that cannot and will not disclose the full truth, because wrong information is mixed with right information, and that takes away from the truth." Well, you're right. It's hard to know what the truth is. It's hard to know what you don't know, frankly. And this is a big, very complicated world, and there are a lot of things going on that many of those of us who are spending our time trying to think about this stuff have not thought about. And there are things that probably are in play that are impossible for us to make sense out of. And it is really easy to project our past or things that we know from the past and presume that way things work or they ought to work are related to what we've experienced in the past. So yeah, truth is, it's hard to tie down. I'd be interested in knowing how you know what truth is, and because it's an interesting philosophic kind of question that some people would suggest that everything is kind of relative, and that truth is relative depending upon what you look for. I mean, scientists will tell you that they think it's true that physics is the same everywhere in the universe. Well, how in the frickin' world do you know what's on the other side of the universe and how it works and how weird it is? So they think that's truth, and they don't even have a basis for having seen the other side of the universe to know. So I don't know, but it's an interesting idea. I think it's an important way to think about some of these things. Bruce Monroe says, I viewed two disc-shaped UFOs hovering over my family patio during a clear night in 1965 in Bakersfield. And he goes on to say, can I contact you if I become a member with questions concerning UFOs and the special UAV event that took place in Arizona? Well, you're always welcome to contact me. And you certainly, if whether you're a member or not, but if you're a member and you want to send questions in, then certainly we'll consider them and try to answer them in this forum. I don't know anything about the event in Arizona in 1997 that you're talking about. Maybe it's the one where the lights all came over Phoenix. And again, I don't know much about that. And again, this is one of those things where there's a whole lot of people in the space who are all trying to drive it one way or another. And so it's hard to know what's true and what isn't true. Carolina Grace says, I very serendipitously happened to see your interview with Mike Adams a couple of hours after it was posted yesterday. And as a very discerning consumer of online content, I do consider the fact that I came across it as a serendipitous guidance. Well, that's good. She then sends along three pages worth of comments that are really quite interesting, but she talks about we need 3D plus embodied role models and new operating system for humanity. And I agree with both of those. That's one thing to read about, as somebody described how somebody who is in 5 or 6 dimension operates, but it's quite another one to watch them and be able to evaluate it that way. She says, my sense is that for those of us called to be at the leading edge of this transformational shift for humanity, we can only influence those not just willing, but able to hear their own calling reflected in our calls to action and prompts. Well, I agree with you. I mean, this is not the space for evangelism. You're not going to convince somebody who isn't ready that they ought to be a part of this. I know that from personal experience. And so I've always said that my job is just to raise a flag. And if people see the flag and resonate with it, and then they come over and they can camp out around here for a little while and we can all talk about this stuff. But I don't think we're in the business, nor do we have the responsibility to convince a whole bunch of other people that these things that are kind of self-evident or emerging to us are, in fact, need to be adopted by all of them. She says, I see the timeline separating and growing wider, and therefore, for those of us called guides, we can only influence the most open and resonant hearts and minds. Yes, ma'am, I agree. She says, happy to share more. I simply wanted to reach out and connect and say if I can contribute to advance the collation of new world resources, I'd be absolutely delighted to do so. It would be my privilege and pleasure. I'm sure we can arrange for that at some point. Please stay checked in. You'll see where we're going, and there'll be plenty of places in which to jump on board. Patrick O'Brien says, good day to you, John. My inquiry is to say, I listened to your interview with Mike Adams and very much would have been so very deeply grateful to have taken part. The biggest worry for people is they think they are a person. And then he goes on to talk a little bit about shortcomings to to approaching this as a person. And I would agree. I mean, we're locked into this language, we're locked into these experiences, we're locked into all the assumptions we've been taught and everything else. And so it is, I don't know how I don't know how not to act like a human. It's possible, I suppose, but I don't know how to do it. Gordon Firth says he's done international investigation work and could possibly be assistance to us in what we're doing. Okay, Gordon, we'll keep that in mind. Luis Lebron says, given that Nassim Haramein and his inevitable conclusion that what a human being is a conduit for the expression of the void, what will it take for us to put aside the limitations of historical narratives that compel us to believe there is a God and it is not us, and to begin to consider how else we might choose to live and redesign our experience in a world of matter as that God force? I think of the human body as the device that receives, processes, and transmits that which is required to create a different reality, a transducer. What will it take for us to free ourselves from the constraints of an externally imposed God? Well, first of all, Nassim Haramein is a smart guy and has some interesting ideas. But his work is largely built upon the principles of the model and the work of Albert Einstein. And there are emerging new, which is all about, that's where black holes and dark matter and I don't know, all those kinds of things come from. And the fact of the matter is there's some really new, interesting science led by the electric universe people who will tell you that Einstein was all wrong and that Nikola Tesla was in fact right. There was a kind of a conflict going between Tesla and Einstein, and Tesla says Einstein's all wrong, and for any of a number of reasons, maybe some that were political, they jumped on Einstein and promoted him and suppressed Tesla. And so there's some ideas around Tesla and the electric universe, which suggests that, there's a different way to look at not only physics, but the way the whole universe and everything else works. That said, that it's clear to me, at least at this point, is that we are in fact essentially God. I mean, if God is omnipresent and omniscient and omnipotent and all of that kind of stuff, then it's everywhere and it's everything. And I'm certainly part of everywhere and everything. And so then you'd have to say, well, then, yeah, you are God. Now, the question is, what's God? And that's a longer discussion than we've got time for today. But some of the stuff I'm reading, just talks about a big undifferentiated dark area of extraordinary bliss. That's the way you get out of these. We extract ourselves from the matrix right now. So I don't know exactly how that is and how that works. Again, I spent a lot of time thinking about this and talked to a lot of smart people who do as well. And I'm coming to the conclusion there's a lot of things I don't know. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that's impossible for us from this position in our development to know. And so I just try to do the best I can each day, and do what I think is most important. Darius Cobalt says, I heard you once mention a machine in which a sick person is placed and within 12 or 24 hours, a person's health is restored. And his wife is sick and she needs help. I don't, this is called a med bed, and I've never met anybody that has literally seen one. I've had people that have said, oh, I'll show you pictures, and they send me drawings and computer generated images and other such things, but I still haven't found anybody. But I still haven't found anybody that has I've literally seen one. And so I have no doubt that they're potentially possible, but I don't, yeah, maybe there's some secret thing somewhere and they're under the table. And that's one of the things that comes out. I don't know. There are some people who talk in those kinds of terms. I think it's really easy to jump on a bandwagon around some of these kind of supposed technologies and really have no idea about how they work and how they would get here and who's got them and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. We'll see. CF Reynolds says, after watching a video of Mike Adams speaking with John Peterson, I'm inspired to contact you. Well, thank you, CF. I am the author of Invoking the Light, Lift the Veil of Illusion, documenting profound spiritual insights. I believe my discoveries may contribute perfectly to your vision of a new world. Lynette Ackerman says, do you discuss the polar shift due in 22 years, according to geologist Douglas Vogt, author of a book with 400 citations? Well, you can be wrong and have 400 citations, let me say. I don't know anything about this book particular, but there are plenty of people who are promoting and very compelling kind of ideas relative to pole shift. Certainly, initially, the magnetic one, which is almost certainly underway right now because there's a distinct thinning of the magnetosphere. And ultimately, there will almost certainly, probably in our lifetimes, if not our near lifetimes, they're going to flip and the North Pole will end up to the South Pole. And that's very disruptive. Disruptive to all kinds of things, including life on the planet and earth changes, earthquakes, and other such things, and so on. And so, that may well be associated with some of the big catastrophic things that many people who think in this area believe is coming inbound somewhere between 2027 and 2029. I've not heard that it's going to come in 22 years. Most everybody that I talk to or read thinks it's a lot closer than that. But I'll be happy to look up the email, the YouTube video that you talk about climate disasters, and that would of course affect the climate as well. Michael Teddy, T-E-T-I, says, just heard John on the Brighton Adams interview. He mentions a community centered around the Institute with like-minded folks. Would welcome the opportunity to speak with you all about this project, wondering about concerns, among others, of food protection, as I'm very interested in relocating to a community with that mindset, and also the possibility of beginning a permaculture model where I will be. Well, Michael, you checked in the right place, because here in Berkeley Springs, our little resort town of only 600 people, but we've got a grand 16,000 in the whole county. We are really working on that. And we have got a community garden that has a dozen different people who are all actively involved in it. It's really beautiful and it's been very effective. We had a garden, we had a farm meeting the other night, just talking about the new year and what we're going to do. We're working on all kinds of things about alternative sources of water and energy and communications. And we've got a very active kind of preparation initiative going. We're starting up a new preparation project that will have all kinds of training every month, have a training session and so on for families. We giving 1,200, 1,500, no, I mean 150 families handheld radios so that in an emergency they can communicate with each other. We're putting the networks together to make sure that the whole county is covered with this. We're interested in all that. So I'm going to put you together with Priscilla Jones, who is our ambassador to folks like you who are interested in coming to Berkeley Springs. And Priscilla can help you answer your questions and show you around town or something if you come. Donna D'Inglio, Gil, yeah, something like that. Sounds Italian to me. I found you through Mike Adams' interview, and I'm interested to share information with you about the spiritual transformation and the way that is the underlying driving force behind the awakening humanity. The awakening humanity is experiencing. Do you know the Urantia book? Yes, I do. I highly recommend you take a look at the Truth Book or the urantiabook.org. Okay. The Urantia book is very interesting, and it's got marvelous kind of information. And I've got some amazing, well, recently deceased scientists and inventors whose whole life was changed by the Urantia book. So thank you for mentioning that. Donna says further that she has an institute called the Institute of Christ Consciousness. And I would be very interested to share with you what is occurring to help our planet ascend out of our ignominious past to rejoin the universe family. Well, happy to learn more about that, for sure. Robert McCoy says, hello, John, I'm listening to your Mike Adams interview and your mention of how to get beyond money. Dolly Saffron had a description of ET societies where money was, nobody had money because everybody was there. There was no power differential between individuals. Dolly's ET world, in her world, every individual is equal in terms of characteristics, their abilities, and their view of reality and their place in it. So no differential, no need for money, all is shared, but all contribute and everybody works equally hard. That sounds interesting and idealistic to me, frankly. Equal in terms of characteristics, really? Not on this planet. Everybody's got different characteristics and comes with different baggage and approaches and other things, whatever, cultures. And their view of reality and their place in it have the common idea of their view of reality and their place in it. That sounds like kind of a hive mind kind of situation where everybody just thinks the same thing. And then you say they all contribute and everybody works equally hard. Well, I don't know what that means. Equally hard, what does hard mean? Same number of hours or the same level of end production, or I don't know. If somebody comes up with an invention that saves the whole world 1,000 hours a year or something like that, did they work hard enough if they only came up with the idea in 2 weeks worth of work? I don't know. We'll see. We're into a space that is really strange, and it is really based upon a whole lot of different things. And there may be a level of equality that we don't fully understand now, and certainly, cooperation rather than competition. But the fact it's hard for me to visualize a world where there is no differential between anyone that would make everyone not have any hair like me, right? So I don't know. Tony Berman Cedar says the question of life and death and the continuity of consciousness as applied to individuals, the individual soul is addressed in this book. And he gives me a bunch of links to different apparently different links to the same book, maybe. We'll look into it and see. Thank you. Armand Najade says you often carry out discussions with Greg Braden, and I often used to watch the videos. I was a fan of Greg in the past. However, several months ago, I found out I had been mistaken about this man. My trust in him was shattered the day I heard him repeating in an interview with yourself the Zionist talking points. Not only Netanyahu lies about the October 7th events, but also supporting Israeli regime's genocide in Gaza. I write you to ask you to convey my message to him. Well, I will certainly mention it to him. I don't know. A lot of people have reasonable, thoughtful perspectives about a lot of things that other reasonable, thoughtful folks don't. And I'm not justifying one thing nor another. And one knows that the Mideast thing situation, particularly that Israeli event, was fraught with ambiguity and other kinds of things. And it is, I don't know, it's just really hard. And you can have have you ever had an opinion about something, found out you were wrong? All of us have done that. And all of us, my life is littered with situations where I felt very strongly about something, thought I really understood it. And you find out later that there was something you didn't know, you didn't understand. And my position rather than Greg's is to take no position. Certainly no definitive thing except to say, as I have to people who have asked me about it, I'm against killing people. And I think that murdering people as a solution to any kind of a problem is a stupid idea that doesn't make any sense. And that is certainly going on in a wholesale way in that area of the world. So Doug Johnson says, Diane, who has no last name, sends me a link and saying you might find this gentleman interesting. Thank you, Diane. We'll check it out. Doug Johnson says, so I exist to assist civilizations advance in as peaceful a message as I can. And then he goes on to say, among other things, that Earth is a place to get real combat experience. But an army can also do great humanitarian work. I know a good bit about that and the ways in which the army has been used in the past to do disaster relief and other kinds of things. They're very good at it and they love it. The guys, they were mostly guys back there when I was working with them. Really thought that was some of the most meaningful work they've ever done. And I even suggested to senior leadership of the Navy that one time they ought to design their ships so that they could be easily used for evacuation of immigrants and other kinds of things, because there were going to be a lot of problems with that kind of stuff. They didn't think that was a very good idea. Doug says one world project that this is kind of broken English. One world project that their forest management earning potential for global development is mulch inculcated with mycelium, maybe pressed with grass seed and bedding, pressing and pressed round in a hollow area for dirt to plant trees in the sand in the desert. If you follow that, it's a novel and interesting kind of idea about how to plant trees in places that where they otherwise wouldn't grow. And so what he's saying is you just add water. If it's windy, you add stones. The trees hold down the turf and things. So thank you. It's an interesting idea, Doug. Just Paul says, I've been listening to your conversation with Greg about the end of religion in your quartet conversation. Find it very interesting. The one thing that keeps poking me, if you would like, is that you, John, would love to have a spiritual awakening moment. Well, of course. Absolutely. I mean, we're all on our way trying to get to where we're going. And Lord knows I've certainly tried a lot of kind of things to be as kind of awake as I can, which is not to say that I'm there yet. I can assure you that. All of the answers you are looking for within you and all of us. The 5D world is already formed. I did approximately 5 years ago under the guidance of Archangel Metatron, and every time I go there, I am met by a little guy who asks me the same question. When are you going to bring others over? The real question is, when are you, he's talking about me, and others coming with me? What's holding you back? No doubt someday we will talk. Love, blessings, all right. Okay, Paul. I'm happy to talk to you. Karen Kine says, I've heard you say that when the internet goes down, we will not be able to get gasoline. I thought that the internet only connected to the card readers on the pumps, not to the pump itself. Only no electricity shuts down the pumps. Well, yeah, but the pumps are controlled by the electronics and the card readers and so on. And so unless you hijack them or you hot wire them or something like that, then they aren't going to work. Also, it seems like a while back you were blending the good with the bad, looking forward to the new world. Now it seems more doom and gloom. Why is that? Maybe it's just me. No, I think that you've got to be aware of what's coming downstream so that you don't get afraid. Because if you get afraid and something happens that you haven't thought about, then you lock up and you can't function effectively. And so that's why I think that we need to be the weatherman here, the forecaster who's saying there's a big storm inbound, and tell you where it's likely to hit the coast, where the hurricane's coming in, and also talk about ways in which we can potentially deal with it, but it does no one any good, except for those maybe who are driving the whole situation. It does nobody any good to get surprised by events of this extraordinary magnitude. Rebecca Kaplan says, do you know of any substantial or reliable evidence that our two strands of DNA are increasing? I don't have the connections and the sources are right at hand, Rebecca. But I have read in the past from a number of sources that and reasons why, and kind of scientific stuff, that there are a lot of kids now that have 3, and in some cases 4 strands of DNA, and that some of these otherworldly sources, ETs, if you will, who are in the mix here, they say that there used to be 12 strands of DNA and 10 strands of DNA were kind of suppressed. And so now what's happening is that these waves of energy coming out of the center of the galaxy and the sun are initiating and activating these previously dormant strands. And so you can find that in Barbara Marciniak's books, But you're looking for reliable evidence, and I don't know what you consider reliable evidence, but there's stuff out there. When we get this AI machine finished, Mike Adams and I, that's the kind of question you could ask it, and it would give you the answer because we're going to load it with. I've got a new person that just checked in the other day that has 25,000 digitized books that we're going to put on this thing. So this new machine is going to be or this new capability, this new app is going to be very powerful and very useful. So thank you. Thank you all. I hope you found some of this useful. I'd just like to remind you that I'm giving a talk, the next transition talk on the 18th of January here in Berkeley Springs, and we live stream it. And the basic idea is that we've got 2 years in which to head on a new direction, and not just in our minds and ideas and things, but in a very tangible kind of solid way toward building a new world. And I'm going to build the case for why that is the situation, and a lot of information on what we need to do in order to do that in practical kind of terms. And so I heard if you find that of interest, I'd love to have you come to Berkeley Springs if you can, and otherwise you can check in on the live stream. So thanks a whole lot. Be well.